The rain hammered the windows of the old Victorian house in San Francisco's Mission District like fists demanding entry, but inside, the silence was a blade slicing through my chest. I, Elias Rivera, 34, a graphic designer who'd fled the corporate grind of New York for this foggy West Coast dream, stood frozen in the dim kitchen, my wedding ring glinting mockingly under the single bulb. My husband, Theo, was gone, off on another business trip that smelled of cheap cologne and lies. And that's when the door creaked open, unleashing Victor Hale, his father, into my solitude like a storm I never saw coming. His eyes, those piercing green storms inherited from Irish roots twisted with Korean heritage, locked onto mine, and in that heartbeat, I knew. This wasn't just a visit. It was the unraveling of everything safe I'd built. Victor's presence filled the room like smoke from a hidden fire, his broad shoulders straining against a damp trench coat, droplets tracing paths down his weathered face. A man of 58 who'd clawed his way from dock worker in Oakland to tech mogul in the Valley, every line etched with battles won and loves lost. He was Theo's father, yes, but to me, he'd always been a shadow, approving nods at our wedding, gruff advice over bourbon, the kind of father-in-law who commanded respect without asking. But tonight, with the city howling outside and my heart a traitor pounding in my ears, that shadow stepped closer, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through the floorboards. "Elias," he said, shedding his coat like a skin, revealing the crisp shirt clinging to his chest. "You look like hell. What's eating you?" I swallowed, my throat dry as the Sahara, forcing a laugh that cracked like thin ice. Theo and I had been married 2 years, a whirlwind of passion turned to ash, his late nights, the unexplained bruises on his knuckles, the way he'd flinch when I reached for him. I'd buried the doubts, told myself it was stress from his finance job, but Victor's gaze peeled me bare. He moved with the grace of a predator, pouring 2 glasses of scotch from the decanter Theo kept hidden, the amber liquid sloshing like blood in a vial. "Sit," he commanded, not unkindly, guiding me to the worn oak table where we'd shared Thanksgivings, his hand brushing my shoulder. Electric, unintended, or was it? My skin prickled, a forbidden spark igniting in the hollow of my gut. As the scotch burned down my throat, Victor leaned in, his cologne a mix of sandalwood and rain, stories spilling from him like confessions. He spoke of his own fractured marriage to Theo's mother, a Korean immigrant who'd left him for the quiet life in Seattle, taking their son and leaving Victor to rebuild alone. "I failed them," he admitted, his voice cracking for the first time, eyes glistening like the bay under moonlight. "Pushed too hard, loved too fierce. Theo's got that fire in him, same as me." His fingers grazed mine across the table, steadying the trembling glass, and time stuttered. I was trembling already, not from cold, but from the heat pooling low, the way his touch lingered, thumb tracing a vein on my wrist as if mapping a secret. The storm outside raged on, thunder clapping like judgment, but inside, the air thickened with unspoken truths. Victor's stories wove through the night, tales of his youth in the Castro, stolen kisses in alleys during the AIDS crisis, the men he'd loved and lost to silence and shame. "Back then," he murmured, his breath warm against my ear as he refilled our glasses, "we hid everything. Desire was a weapon, Elias. It could save you or slit your throat." His words hung heavy, mirroring my own buried longings. The way I'd always glanced at him during family dinners, envying the strength in his laugh, the quiet command that made Theo seem like a pale echo. Theo, who now felt like a stranger, his affection mechanical, his eyes wandering to apps and strangers while I starved for real touch. By midnight, the rain had softened to a whisper, but Victor hadn't moved from my side. We were on the living room rug now, backs against the couch, empty glasses forgotten, his arms slung casually over my shoulders as if we'd done this 1,000 times. "You're too good for him," he said suddenly, voice rough with gravel and regret, turning to face me. His face was inches away, the lines around his eyes deepening with vulnerability, green depths pulling me under. I wanted to protest, to defend the man I'd vowed to love, but the words died as his hand cupped my jaw, rough palm against smooth skin, tilting my head up. "I've seen the way he treats you, like a trophy gathering dust. You deserve fire, Elias. You deserve to burn." My heart thundered, a war drum in my ribs, fear and desire twisting like vines around my spine. This was Victor, Theo's father, the man who'd walked me down the aisle in spirit, who'd clapped Theo on the back with pride. Crossing this line was madness, a chasm that would swallow us whole. Yet as his thumb brushed my lower lip, parting it slightly, I leaned in, breath mingling, the world narrowing to the salt of his skin and the tremor in his exhale. Our lips met, tentative at first, a question in the press, then deepening into a storm of its own, his mustache grazing my skin like a secret promise, hands roaming with the urgency of years denied. I trembled, body alive with terror and want, the kiss tasting of scotch and sin, pulling me under until I drowned willingly. When we broke apart, gasping, Victor's forehead rested against mine, his voice a broken whisper. "God help me, Elias. I didn't come here for this." But his eyes said otherwise, dark with the same hunger mirroring my own. The clock ticked mercilessly, marking the seconds until dawn would expose us. But in that suspended breath, I saw it. Not just desire, but a lifeline, a chance to reclaim the pieces of myself Theo had chipped away. Little did I know, as his fingers laced through mine, that this night was only the spark. The inferno awaited, threatening to consume family, future, and all the fragile illusions we'd clung to. The morning light filtered through the lace curtains like a reluctant witness, casting golden bars across the tangled sheets where Victor and I lay, limbs entwined in the guest room bed we'd stumbled into after the kiss turned to frenzy. My body ached in the best-worst way, marked by his grip. Faint bruises blooming on my hips like forbidden flowers, reminders of hands that knew exactly how to claim without breaking. He stirred beside me, his chest rising and falling in sleep, silver threading his black hair, a vulnerability that made my throat tighten. At 58, Victor Hale was a landscape of strength and scars, his body honed from years of manual labor before boardrooms tamed him, yet soft in places only intimacy revealed. I, at 34, felt like a boy again, lean from skipped meals and stress, my olive skin flushed against his paler tone, a mosaic of Latino fire meeting his mixed heritage storm. Reality crashed in with the buzz of my phone on the nightstand, Theo's name flashing, a text chain of apologies and excuses. "Miss you, babe. Flight delayed. Home tomorrow." Lies, I knew now, confirmed by the anonymous messages I'd found last week. Coordinates to a motel in the Tenderloin, timestamps matching his overtime. Victor's eyes opened, green and clear, reading the screen over my shoulder. "Bastard," he growled, pulling me closer, his arm a steel band around my waist. "You don't have to do this alone anymore." His words were a balm, but the fear gnawed deeper. What if Theo walked in? What if this blaze we'd ignited scorched everything to ash? We rose slowly, the house creaking like it sensed our sin, and over coffee in the sun-dappled kitchen, Victor laid it bare. "I watched you two from the start," he said, stirring sugar with deliberate circles, his voice steady but laced with pain. "Theo's my blood, but he's broken, chasing shadows of what I couldn't give him. A father who worked too much, loved too quietly." He reached across the table, tracing the wedding band on my finger, his touch igniting fresh sparks. "You're the light he doesn't deserve, Elias. And damn me, I've wanted to be that light for you since the day you said, I do'd. The confession hung between us, raw and electric, pulling me into memories I'd suppressed. Victor's lingering hugs at holidays, the way he'd text me articles on design, bypassing Theo entirely, building a bridge I'd crossed in dreams but never dared in waking. Desire had always simmered, a undercurrent in stolen glances during barbecues in Golden Gate Park, his laugh booming over the foghorn as Theo sulked in the corner. But fear had chained it. Fear of rejection, of appending the family I'd craved after losing my own parents to a car wreck in my teens. Now, with Victor's gaze holding mine like a vow, that fear twisted into something fiercer, a desperate need to be seen, truly seen, by a man who mirrored my hunger without the games. We spent the day in a haze of stolen moments. The rain cleared to a crisp autumn blue, and we wandered the neighborhood, hands brushing in crowds of taqueria lines and muraled alleys, pretending normalcy while the air crackled. At Dolores Park, under the shadow of palm trees, Victor pulled me onto a bench, his lips finding my neck in a kiss that tasted of street cart churros and recklessness. Tell me to stop, he murmured, breath hot against my pulse. And I will. But I couldn't, my hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, the world fading to the rhythm of his heartbeat against mine. Trembling, I whispered my truths. The loneliness of Theo's absences, the way desire for Victor had haunted my nights, a ghost I'd exorcised with guilt until now. As dusk painted the sky in bruised purples, we returned home, the Victorians' walls closing like conspirators. Dinner was simple. Victor at the stove, sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms corded with veins, chopping garlic with the precision of a man who'd survived tempests. I watched, mesmerized, until he turned, pinning me against the counter with his body, mouth claiming mine in a kiss that bruised and healed in equal measure. We made love there, frantic and tender, the tile cool against my back as he whispered my name like a prayer, bodies moving in a dance of fear and fierce want. Afterward, spent and shaking, I traced the tattoos on his shoulder, faded anchors from his sailor days, and asked the question burning, what now? Theo comes home tomorrow. Victor's face hardened, the mogul surfacing, but his eyes softened for me. We tell him, no more shadows. His plan was bold. Confront Theo together, expose the fractures, offer a path forward or let it shatter. But as night deepened, doubt crept in like fog off the bay. Theo's calls went unanswered, his texts turning frantic. Where are you? And I wondered if this desire, this trembling bridge between us, could withstand the storm of blood ties and betrayals. Victor held me through it, his embrace a fortress, but sleep evaded, my mind racing with visions of ruin. Divorce papers, family rifts, the city swallowing our secrets whole. By dawn, the house felt like a powder keg, Victor's resolve stealing mine as we packed a bag. His, not mine, preparing for the inevitable clash. You're not trembling alone anymore, he vowed, kissing my knuckles, his lips lingering on the ring I twisted like a noose. Desire still simmered, a low flame in his touch, but fear loomed larger now, a specter with Theo's face. As his car pulled away to give space, promising to return by evening, I stood on the stoop, heart a wild bird battering its cage. The door clicked shut behind me, locking in the scent of him, and I realized, this wasn't just about want. It was redemption, a chance to choose fire over fading embers, humanity over hollow vows. But oh, the cost. What would the confrontation unleash? Theo arrived that afternoon like a thunderclap unannounced, his key rattling in the lock, face pale and drawn under the stubble, eyes bloodshot from whatever demons he'd wrestled in that motel. At 32, he was a shadow of the vibrant man I'd met at a gallery opening in Soma, tall and lithe like his father, with the same green eyes, but hollowed by secrets, his Korean-Irish features sharpened by paranoia. "Elias," he called, voice edged with accusation, dropping his duffel in the hall. I met him in the living room, arms crossed to hide the tremor, the ghost of Victor's touch still warming my skin like a brand. He saw it immediately, the flush on my cheeks, the way I couldn't meet his gaze without flinching. "What the hell happened while I was gone?" Theo demanded, stepping closer, his breath sour with airport whiskey. The air crackled, kitchen time ticking like a bomb, and in that charged silence, I broke, words tumbling out in a rush, the loneliness, the lies, the anonymous tips that led me to his double life. His face crumpled, then twisted, shock melting to rage. "You spied on me? After everything?" He grabbed my arm, fingers digging in, not hard enough to bruise, but enough to echo the control he'd wielded for months. I yanked free, heart slamming, voice steady despite the quake inside. "It's over, Theo. I know about the others, the endless parade you think I don't see." He reeled, collapsing onto the couch, head in hands, sobs racking his frame. For a moment, pity surged. This was the boy I'd loved, the one who'd promised forever under the Golden Gate Bridge. But it curdled quick, replaced by the raw truth Victor had unearthed. I deserved more than scraps. As Theo's confessions spilled, addiction to the thrill, fear of settling, echoes of his parents' bitter split. The door opened again, Victor's silhouette filling the frame like fate's cruel jest. Time fractured. Theo's head snapped up, eyes widening in twin realizations. Betrayal from his husband, intrusion from his father. "Dad, what the fuck are you doing here?" Victor didn't flinch, striding in with the calm of a man who'd faced boardroom wolves, his gaze flicking to me, protective, possessive, before settling on his son. "I'm here for him, Theo. For Elias. And to tell you what a damn fool you've been." The room ignited, words flying like shrapnel. Theo accusing Victor of jealousy, of always preferring me. Victor countering with brutal honesty, laying bare Theo's inherited flaws, the emotional voids he'd never filled as a father. Punches weren't thrown, but the blows landed deeper. Theo's voice cracking on pleas, Victor's steady with regret, me caught in the crossfire, trembling not just from fear, but the dawning clarity of fracture lines too wide to mend. In the melee, Theo lunged, not at Victor, but at me, hands fisting my shirt, eyes wild with desperation. "You let him touch you?" "In our bed." The accusation hung, venomous, and Victor was there in a blur, prying him off with a grip like iron, father and son chest to chest, breaths heaving. "Enough!" Victor roared, voice echoing off the walls, a primal sound that stilled us all. Theo staggered back, collapsing again, the fight draining to defeat, tears carving paths down his face. "I loved you, Elias. I tried." But his words rang hollow, eroded by months of neglect, and in that broken admission, I saw the boy he'd been, lost long before I arrived. Victor pulled me aside, into the kitchen's dim refuge, his hands framing my face, thumbs wiping tears I hadn't noticed falling. "Breathe," he murmured, forehead to mine, the storm outside mirroring the one within, rain lashing anew, thunder growling low. Desire flickered, an undercurrent in his touch, but tempered now by the gravity of ruin. "This ends tonight. Divorce, distance, whatever it takes. But you and I, we start clean." His kiss was soft, sealing the promise, lips tasting of salt and resolve, sending shivers through me that blended terror with tentative hope. Theo left by evening, duffel repacked, a ghost slipping into the fog-shrouded streets, his final look back a mix of sorrow and spite, words unspoken hanging like threats. "You'll regret this." The door shut, and silence descended, heavy as judgment. Victor and I stood amid the wreckage, Overturned chairs, shattered glass from a flung tumbler, our hands finding each other in the debris, fingers interlocking like lifelines. That night, we didn't make love. We held on, bodies curled on the couch, his heartbeat a steady drum against my ear, whispering stories of futures unmarred by shadows. Fear lingered, a specter of legal battles and family whispers, but desire burned brighter, a beacon through the tremble. Weeks blurred into a fragile new rhythm. Lawyers' calls, Theo's sporadic texts veering from vitriol to vulnerability, Victor's quiet strength anchoring me through the fog. We moved to his loft in the dog patch, industrial bones softened by his artist's touch, views of the shipyards where he'd once toiled, a space alive with possibility. Mornings found us tangled in sunlight, his hands mapping my body with reverence, not haste, kisses that built slow, trembling with the depth of rediscovered want. At 58, Victor moved with a patience born of loss, drawing out my gasps, teaching me trust in every caress, while I, at 34, poured my fire into him. Youth's urgency meeting wisdom's depth, our bodies a dialogue of healing. Yet drama stalked us. Theo's sabotage attempts, anonymous leaks to Victor's board painting him as unstable, whispers in the Castro bars where our story inevitably leaked. One night, as we walked hand in hand through the vibrant streets, rainbow flags snapping in the breeze, a confrontation erupted. Theo, drunk and defiant, blocking our path under a neon sign, eyes glassy with pain. "You stole him, Dad. From your own son." The words cut, Victor flinching, but he stood firm, voice low and laced with sorrow. "No, son. You pushed him away. And I fell in love with the man you were too scared to cherish." Fists clenched, Theo swung, wild, grief-fueled, but Victor sidestepped, pulling me behind him, the punch glancing off his shoulder. Bystanders intervened, the moment fracturing into chaos. Sirens wailing, Theo hauled away in cuffs for assault, his cries echoing, "I hate you both." A howl that pierced the night. Victor trembled then, not from the blow, but the weight of paternal failure, collapsing against a lamppost as I held him, our roles reversed, my whispers now the balm. "You didn't steal me. You saved me." In that raw vulnerability, desire reignited, not frantic, but profound, our kiss under the streetlight a defiant claim, bodies pressing close amid the dispersing crowd, trembling with the thrill of survival. The aftermath was a gauntlet. Court dates in the sterile halls of City Hall, Theo's reluctant rehab stint funded by Victor's guilt-ridden check, family therapy sessions where Korean proverbs clashed with Irish brogues, unearthing buried wounds. Through it, our love deepened, kitchen table confessions turning to rooftop stargazing, Victor's hand in mine as we traced constellations over the bay. "Fear and desire," he said one night, lips brushing my temple. "They're twins, Elias. You can't have one without the other." I believed him, my tremors now echoes of passion, not dread, as we built a life from ashes. Charity work for queer youth in the Mission, Victor mentoring where he'd once failed, me designing murals that told our story in vibrant strokes. Months later, on a crisp spring evening, we stood on that same rooftop from our first stolen glance, the city a glittering sea below. Theo had written, a halting letter of apology, steps toward his own redemption, a fragile bridge we'd cross in time. Victor turned to me, green eyes alight with the fire we'd kindled, pulling a simple band from his pocket. Not gold, but titanium, etched with anchors. "Marry me," he said, voice rough with emotion, not out of fear, but because you make me whole. Tears blurred my vision, desire surging as I nodded, our kiss a vow sealed in starlight, bodies trembling in the wind. Fear conquered, love eternal. In that moment, I understood the human truth we'd clawed toward. Love isn't a straight path, but a winding climb through shadows, where desire tempers fear into strength, and vulnerability forges unbreakable bonds. We were trembling still, but together, two men, scarred and soaring, rewriting our story under San Francisco's endless sky. And in the quiet after, as his arms wrapped me tight, I knew. This was the meaning, the fire that lit the dark.